Hi, everyone, and welcome to Gladverse TV, the show in which the silver lining is always our North Star. I am super excited today to have a discussion on part of our Bounce Back series, but today we're talking about bouncing back from miscarriages. There's so many statistics out there, but there are a few that have kind of touched my heart. The Mayo Clinic says that stress incredibly does not play a role in miscarriages. I would kind of beg to differ because somehow I think that stress plays a role in almost everything that impacts our bodies and our lives. 2% of women have two losses in a row. And that was pretty intriguing to learn as well. And there are actually types of foods that you can eat that are known to be linked with causing miscarriages. So we'll discuss it a little bit later. But I'm super excited. The best part about this is that I have the most amazing guest. Her name is Lisa Duffy, and she's a Catholic author, speaker, and divorce recovery expert who experienced the tragedy of an unwanted divorce in the early 1990s. She has more than 20 years of personal experience helping people rebuild their lives after divorce. Author of many books on divorce recovery, most recently, Mending the Heart, a Catholic annulment companion. She has also instituted the Journey of Hope program for Catholic divorce support groups in parishes across the US and in Canada. Aside from her dedication to her family, Lisa speaks at conferences, appears on television and radio, coaches one-on-one and in groups, and holds online events. She resides in South Carolina with her husband and three children. Welcome, 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 Lisa. I am so delighted you're here.
Hey, Laura, thank you so much for having me. It really is a pleasure and an honor to be on this show with you.
I appreciate that. Thank you. All right, so this is a topic that can be triggering for some women, but I would love for you to share your story of experiencing miscarriages and bouncing back from that.
Sure. Well, my miscarriages actually took place a long time ago, but I had three in a row, I guess you would say, even though they were a couple of years apart, each one. I was born and raised in Southern California. And so at the time, that's where I was living. I was married, and the first miscarriage happened probably, I'm going to say about 12 weeks, 12 or 13 weeks along. So I had time to know that I was pregnant. I was experiencing some morning sickness, a very small amount of growth. But I remember the miscarriage itself was extremely painful, both physically and emotionally.
Okay.
And the second miscarriage is the longest. The baby was the oldest, we'll put it that way. So I was 19 weeks along. So I was pretty far along. And that was an extremely difficult situation, which I'm going to elaborate on just a little bit.
Okay.
That's for the benefit of your viewers. So it was actually a blessing that I was able to carry the baby that far along, because it gave the doctors the opportunity to see what was going on. Because during that pregnancy, for about 2 months, I was bleeding just the same as if I was having a regular period, but it just never stopped. And so they could not figure out what the problem was. I was on bed rest, and I don't remember, 30 years now. I don't remember all the restrictions, but they were keeping a tight eye on me and making sure that I was just obeying everything that they asked me to do without putting me in the hospital. So at about 18 or 19 weeks, the sonogram revealed the problem, which was I had a bicornuate uterus. And what that actually is a heart-shaped uterus. If you can see that, there we go.
Yeah.
So there was this barrier dividing my uterus into two rooms, if you will.
Right.
Yeah. And so the baby was in one side, and the other side essentially, as the doctor put it to me, was freaking out. It didn't understand what was going on. So it was having a period, basically.
Right.
So I was pregnant and having a period at the same time. So they told me that the pregnancy likely would terminate itself because there would be no room for the child to get to full term.
Of course.
So that was sad news to begin with, but the bleeding actually caused an infection that was very acute that unfortunately killed the baby and nearly took my life. So this was Christmas. This was 2 weeks before Christmas, 1989. And I just ended up in the hospital. They had to do a DNC. I had 106 temp. It was really a traumatic episode. And that was a very, very difficult event to get over, to deal with, there's a word that I want, rectify, make peace with is a better term, I guess. And so, long story short, the year after, my doctor, who was at Cedars-Sinai Medical Hospital in Los Angeles, he told me there was a new type of surgery where they could go in and they could reconstruct my uterus and take care of the problem, which was great. I had the surgery. It was similar to recovering from a C-section, that recovery period. And then they said, well, getting pregnant is going to be an issue for you. He said, you can carry a child to term now. The surgery was successful, but it was extremely invasive, and we give you less than 1% chance of conceiving. So basically they were saying, even with, if I decided to pursue, fertility drugs or in vitro, he said I would have a very difficult time getting pregnant, but go for it, just try. So it was really just kind of a strange situation. I was like, hey, now I can carry a child, and then they dropped the bomb. Well, you really can't conceive. So, we did our best. I did conceive, but I lost the child. Oh my goodness, in 8 weeks, I think. And they told me at that point they thought that was a fluke, and that they really didn't see, they weren't hopeful that I could conceive. So those were my 3 miscarriages.
Were they your first pregnancies, or you had children before?
I did not have children before. I actually, unfortunately, my marriage ended in divorce. It was not a divorce that I wanted, but it happened regardless. I moved forward, rebuilt my life. I met the man that I'm married to today 7 years later, told him, if we get married, I can't have children. So there's that. Mm-hmm. And he said, that's fine. We'll get married. I love you. Maybe we'll adopt, but I love you, which was wonderful. But then 2 weeks after we got home from our honeymoon, I was pregnant. And the doctor who did the blood work sat me down and said, I want you to know this is a small miracle, because someone with your history should not be pregnant.
Right.
And I said, I definitely know. And so we had our first child, Christina, and we thought that was the fluke. And then we had 2 more, boom, boom.
I love
So they're all 21 months apart. But now my youngest is 17. The other 2 are, one is about to be out of the house. The other one is out of the house. And I just am so grateful for another chance at being a mother. It was just the greatest gift.
It's so interesting. As I was listening to your story, there are two things that stand out to me. One, I'm surprised that you kept trying after the second one. I'm I definitely admire the degree of inner strength and compartmentalizing to, make that attempt again, because I personally would have panicked. The second thing is, was there any thought in your mind that maybe the miscarriages scared your ex-husband and could have been a factor in that as well? Oftentimes we don't speak about the impact on men with miscarriages.
Um, if it weren't for other things that I knew that had happened, I would say yes. But I'm actually going to say thank you for posing that question, because maybe indeed, aside from all the other things that had happened,
Yeah.
maybe indeed that was. I don't know, and I did not ever think to ask him. And so you bring up an excellent point. Maybe that is something that should be talked about a little bit more. I know men oftentimes aren't into sharing those aspects of their feelings, and that's okay. But that deserves consideration for sure.
Yeah. Your story is just so incredibly powerful. One, it speaks to not only your fortitude, but also your innate belief in your core that that's not going to be my life. I'm going to have children. It's going to happen. And secondly, how quickly it happened with the person who is supposed to be your life partner. And sometimes I think about life and how synergies work. And when your souls are aligned, it's just my personal philosophy. I just believe that things happen in the way that it should, right? So the obstacles that you might have experienced initially have kind of like all dissipated.
Mm.
And I'm just impressed by your story. I'm not only wow, was it raw and gripping, but I also learned something about the human body, because I often wondered how women menstruated. I would hear of these stories of women having a menstrual cycle while being pregnant. It always just seemed a very odd thing, because you're supposed to, pregnancy should be the absence of seeing that period. And so having the two, what you just explained, makes perfect sense. Um, it's interesting because as I was reading about yesterday, and I mentioned about the Times of India report about certain foods, I read that pineapple can be a challenge. Papayas. I mean, it's just,
Oh,
it was definitely one of the strangest things. Raw eggs also. So I don't know how much truth there is to that, but that is really something to consider as well. So I would encourage any viewer watching this to, really do the research to see if that might have been a pivotal factor. Maybe something that you truly enjoy that might have been a pivotal factor in, let's say, if you had a miscarriage or not. And then also, it's the perhaps the most frightening part of it, I suppose. I have a friend who lost her child at 6 months. And sorry, she was 6 months pregnant. And she had to go through the physical process of giving birth to that child. And I cannot even imagine or fathom what that experience must have been like, because you also mentioned that you were at 19 weeks. And I'm sure there was like a connection
absolutely.
that was there. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yes. And I, for anybody, I'd like to say to anybody who has gone through a miscarriage, suffered the loss of that child, and has had someone say to them, well, it's not like, they were a living, breathing human being that you spent time with and stuff. And we'll talk about the well-meaning comments that people have, maybe in a little bit.
Mhm.
But it is a very personal connection. Now, I will find this link or this article for you. So I'm just drawing it out of my memory. But in the last year and a half, I do know there was an article written that stated that children leave their DNA in their mother. There will always be their children's DNA within them, and vice versa.
Yeah.
Children always have their mother's DNA in them. So it's not an accident that there is this deep, deep connection when you know that there is a human being growing inside you. It is, in my specific opinion, it is an honor. It is a wonderful grace to be able to carry a child, to be gifted with that child, if you want to put it that way. In my opinion, a child is such a gift. And so it is a deep connection, and it doesn't matter if you lose that pregnancy at 7 or 8 weeks along or later.
Right.
There is that connection, and there is a sense of loss, and it is okay to acknowledge it as such, and it is okay to grieve it. I think it's important to grieve it.
I agree with that. And it's so interesting because of the high number of miscarriages that are out there. What is missing, I think, is the loneliness of the individual experience. That there is this lumping, oh, it happens all the time, versus, but it happened to me. And that changes the entire dynamic. And oftentimes, my experience has been in conversations that I've had. So understand, I don't have children. I've challenged with fibroids for as long as I can remember. I've had 3 surgeries for that, plus an ectopic pregnancy, and I just was not going to go through that craziness to try to get pregnant. However, there are conversations that happen to women who don't have children and who have also miscarried, where there's a degree of blame. There's an assignment of blame, like you did something wrong. You're flawed, right? Something is wrong with you internally that has caused you to lose a child or not to be able to carry a child. Can you share a little bit of some of the comments that you received?
Sure. And I think it's also important to note that there are some women who it's not an incredibly grave experience. They sometimes, and it has nothing to do with, I think just some women are more accepting and are more ready to move forward, and their grieving process may be shorter. But for someone who is, contemplating that, well, is there something more that I could have done? Is there some behavior I could have avoided? Whatever that, those mental gymnastics that we put ourselves through.
Yeah, for sure.
Whatever they are, I think it's important, number one, to get information, because information is power, right? So you want to talk to your doctor and you want to hear from his expertise. Was there something I could have done to prevent this? And just accept whatever he tells you. I think by and large, unless you're living a lifestyle that is detrimental, obviously, to a pregnancy, I think by and large, it just happens. And I understand that that's not a very satisfying answer. And because I remember getting that myself. With all 3 pregnancies, I asked that question, was there something I could have done?
Right.
And all 3 times, I'm sorry, my husband's coming home.
That's good.
Can you close the door?
Very television. I love it.
All 3 times, I was told the same thing, that there was nothing you could have done. Obviously, we knew the second time around what the deal was, but it does just happen. And the fact that you don't get a satisfying answer, I think, is an opportunity or an invitation for not acceptance, but learning how to make peace with it, because it's out of your control, right? So when things are out of our control, we have to find a way to deal with it. And the best way is to start on that road by saying, okay, this is out of my control. I wanted the child. I want to be a mother. I want more children, whatever the case is. And that was not in God's plan, or that was not what was meant for me at this time. How do I deal with this? And that's a very personal struggle. It's a very personal journey.
Absolutely.
One that only that person can go through, but it's a opportunity for growth as a person, for sure.
For sure. All right. So on this show, we definitely, it's called Gladverse for a reason, because we want to look at adversity in the lightest possible way to understand that there's always, always, always a benefit, a silver lining, whatever it is, that there's always something positive that comes out of even the worst of experiences. And so this section is called Moments of Gladversity. So when did you find your glad moment throughout this experience?
Well, I have to say that I struggled quite a bit, because I was also in that third miscarriage. I was going to go through a divorce. They were almost back to back, the miscarriage and the divorce. And I think that for a good while, I was a victim. I remember attending church one Sunday, and the priest at the end of Mass asked all the moms to stand up, and he gave them a blessing. And then he asked, for all the new moms to, identify themselves, and he gave them a special blessing. And I was mortified. I just felt awful. And I, thought, wow, what a terribly timed incident. I mean, this was like 3 weeks after
Wow.
everything had, fallen apart, and I just felt horrible. But I really started to understand that as long as I was a victim, I was never going to move forward in any way. I could never feel happy for anyone else, the way I probably should have felt for all those moms.
Right.
That were there. And I think, I don't really recall a specific episode, but I do know that at some point in the future, I got tired of being a victim, and I got tired of blaming other people for my issues.
Right.
And I decided, you know what? It's time to put on my big girl pants and start being me, and accept what has happened in my life as that's what's happened in my life, and what am I going to do with that? And so that was when I just started saying, I have to make peace. And so I tried to find that peace. And for me, as a believer, I believe that those 3 little ones that I never got to hold are in heaven praying for me.
Yeah.
And I look forward to being reunited with them. I've heard a lot of stories of other people, just different stories. They're probably kind of rolling into one, but, people who have had near-death experiences, and they come back and they say, wow, I didn't know I had a brother or a sister.
Wow.
Things like that. I've heard a lot of those before. And so I believe that, I will be reunited with them. And that's a joy for me. Another thing is, I bought a Christmas ornament for my children. So even to this day, it's hanging on our Christmas tree.
Yeah.
And that is sort of my little memorial for them. It's just little steps that you can take to make peace. I know this was not a thing when I had my miscarriages, but it is now. And I fully support it. A lot of women name their children that they lost.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of women have memorial services, or even funerals, depending on the, what time
Right.
in the pregnancy they were lost. So there are lots of ways that you can do it. Now, I know that, Lauren, you're a big journaler, and I am also a big proponent of journaling. If someone has a miscarriage, this is a great time, even if it's not a practice that you will sustain for the rest of your life. Journaling is a great way to get those feelings and thoughts out of your heart and your head onto a piece of paper. And it looks a little different once you get it out. It sort of takes a different angle. And then the beauty, I think, I'm sure you will agree, is that years later, you can go back and go, wow, I have come a long way. So yeah, those are lots of really positive things that you can do to help make peace with your loss.
I agree. And I wanted to add just a little bit and sorry to tie this in, but I think women who don't have children also have to find ways to process that. There's a lot of guilt that's associated with not being able to have a child. And oftentimes, we wear the baggage of society, the expectations of society that we should have. And so in my own experience, I had to come to terms with that was not my life's path. That, even as my time as a teacher, that all those children came to me because I was supposed to be a mom of some sort in another capacity. And so it took a while to shed that belief structure, and to also to remove that guilt from my life, and just understand that this is, the full embodiment of who I need to be. This is where I'm supposed to be. And my path includes lots of nieces and nephews and tons of family members. So I am blessed beyond measure. And I think with that degree of understanding that the blessings don't necessarily come from having that, but just knowing that I impact lives is something that brings me tremendous joy. Absolutely. So I wanted to thank you so much. With this show, we always stop with, an action step. I believe very strongly that we should put things into action, not only listen, but also implement. And you mentioned journaling. So for those who have gone through a miscarriage, I would encourage you to just write your heart out, write a letter to your child who is now an adult, and speak about like the joy that you saw when you first saw his or her face. Who does he or she look like? Is it like 50% you, 50% the dad? And just talk about different increments in their lives, right? So at age 4, you were adorable on your first day of school. Speak about milestones, but in a positive way, as if these were lived experiences. And be creative, don't judge, and also understand that sometimes these things can be triggering in the sense that the eye wells open up, but it is so cathartic once you go through that process. Journaling is powerful. I say it every single time. I love it. I think it's the best thing out there. But also, we as women especially, we need to stop being so hard on ourselves. Self-love is okay. Being a mom is not a sacrifice. You can do both. You can love yourself fully and love your children even more fully. But being a mother does not equate to you taking a back burner in your life. I believe that's very strongly. And I don't know if you had any parting words, but I would love to hear that.
The only thing that I'd like to say is, it's Christmas time, and there are lots of parties and get-togethers with family and friends. And I know from firsthand, people can say things that hurt. Like they will come up and in an attempt to console you, they say things that hurt you. It's easy to do. And I think that this is a great time for patience and forgiveness, because what I've learned over the years is when people see you hurting and they can't do anything about it, and well, first of all, they want to help. but they don't know what to do or say.
Mhm.
So oftentimes what they do or say comes out awkwardly, or they didn't really think it through, or they just don't know how it's going to hit you, but they really are well-meaning.
Right.
And so I think the holidays is a great time to just, you know that they're trying to help and they don't really know how. And
Sure.
if something they say hurts or zings or whatever, just water off a duck's back, let it go, because they're making an attempt to console you.
I
So
agree. I agree. I think we have to treat each other with a degree of compassion as well, and understand that each of our journeys are very different. And so what is considered, offensive to me was well intentioned when you said it. And so we just need to be mindful of that. And just in all things, love. I don't know what else to tell you. In all things, love. Choose it. So I want to thank you so much, Lisa. I cannot begin to tell you how powerfully potent your story is, and how I know it will impact so many who are going through their own personal struggles. And I'm curious, I would like to encourage men who might be watching this program to comment if they've ever experienced that, because I'd love to hear the male's viewpoint on what that is for them to see their partner going through this and being unable to fully console. And what does their experience of grief look like in that process? But guys, remember, you have journaling homework. And Lisa, a million thanks. You're going to be back, I know.
thank you. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share my story. I really appreciate it,
Oh,
and all your great work.
of course. And I have all your social media stuff. All your information is going to be readily available to anyone who's viewing. Lisa's amazing. Book her. Have her come speak at your event, or buy her books, even better. All right. So thank you so much. I appreciate you. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.